In just 4 years, somewhere between 30 and 60% of Europe's entire population died. Entire villages disappeared completely. Bodies piled up faster than anyone could bury them. And nobody, not doctors, not priests, not kings, genuinely understood what was killing them, or how to make it stop. This is the story of the Black Death. Before we continue, if you're enjoying these deep dives into history, please follow our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It genuinely helps us keep bringing you these stories. And honestly, it costs you nothing but takes just a couple of seconds. So please do consider hitting that subscribe button. It truly means a lot to us. Now, let's step back into the 14th century, into a world genuinely unprepared for what was coming. By the early 1300s, Europe's population had grown genuinely significant over the preceding centuries, with crowded cities, extensive trade routes connecting distant regions, and increasingly interconnected commercial networks stretching from Western Europe all the way to Asia. Historians generally believe the disease originated somewhere in Central Asia, likely carried by fleas living on black rats, though the genuine exact origin point remains debated among researchers studying this catastrophic historical event even today. This disease, caused by a bacterium called Yersinia pestis, genuinely traveled westward along the very trade routes that had made medieval commerce so prosperous, carried by merchants, travelers, and the rats that inevitably infested trading ships and caravans throughout this period. The disease reportedly first reached Europe in 1347, when Genoese trading ships arrived at the Sicilian port of Messina, carrying crews who were genuinely already severely ill, many dying or already dead by the time their ships reached the harbor. Local authorities in Messina, genuinely alarmed by the condition of these arriving sailors, ordered the ships to leave the harbor immediately. But the damage had genuinely already been done. The disease had already begun spreading among the local population before this quarantine attempt. From Sicily, the disease genuinely spread with terrifying speed throughout the Italian peninsula, reaching major cities like Genoa, Venice, and Florence within months. Overwhelming populations who had absolutely no understanding of what was causing this rapidly spreading illness. The disease genuinely manifested in several distinct forms, the most common being bubonic plague, characterized by painful swollen lymph nodes called buboes, along with fever, chills, and extreme exhaustion, symptoms that typically appeared within days of initial infection. A considerably more deadly variant, pneumonic plague, affected the lungs directly and could genuinely spread through airborne transmission between people, making it even more contagious and typically resulting in death within just a day or two of symptoms first appearing. Medieval physicians, genuinely operating with medical knowledge that had barely advanced beyond ancient Greek and Roman theories, had absolutely no effective understanding of germ theory or how diseases actually spread, leaving them genuinely helpless against this rapidly advancing catastrophe. Many medieval doctors genuinely believed the plague was caused by miasma, poisonous bad air rising from rotting organic matter, leading them to recommend genuinely ineffective remedies like burning aromatic herbs, avoiding baths, or carrying sweet-smelling flowers to ward off supposedly contaminated air. Some physicians developed the genuinely distinctive plague doctor costume that has since become historically iconic. A long waxed coat, gloves, and most notably, a beaked mask filled with aromatic herbs, genuinely believed to filter out the poisonous miasma thought to cause infection. As the disease spread with genuinely terrifying speed throughout 1348, entire towns and villages found themselves overwhelmed, with mortality rates in some communities reaching genuinely staggering levels, sometimes killing more than half the local population within just a few weeks. The sheer scale of death genuinely overwhelmed traditional burial practices entirely. Church cemeteries quickly filled beyond capacity, forcing communities to dig massive communal burial pits, sometimes containing hundreds of bodies, simply to keep pace with the genuinely staggering death toll. Contemporary chroniclers genuinely describe scenes of absolute horror throughout affected regions, with the Italian writer Giovanni Boccaccio famously documenting how the plague had genuinely broken down normal social bonds, with family members abandoning even their own sick or dying relatives out of pure terror. Boccaccio's genuine first-hand account describes how some people, genuinely believing death was inevitable, regardless of their actions, threw themselves into wild excess and pleasure-seeking, while others retreated into extreme religious devotion, desperately hoping divine intervention might somehow spare them. Religious responses to the plague genuinely varied dramatically throughout Europe, with some communities organizing massive penitential processions, while more extreme groups called flagellants traveled between towns, publicly whipping themselves in genuine attempts to atone for what they believed were humanity's collective sins. Tragically, the genuine panic and desperation caused by the plague also led to horrific scapegoating, with Jewish communities throughout Europe genuinely facing brutal persecution, as some desperate populations falsely blamed them for deliberately poisoning wells and causing the disease. This genuinely baseless persecution resulted in numerous documented massacres of Jewish communities throughout German-speaking regions and elsewhere in Europe, a tragic and historically significant example of how catastrophic events can genuinely amplify existing prejudices during periods of extreme social crisis. As the plague continued its genuinely devastating march across Europe, it eventually reached England in 1348. France, Spain, and Germany experienced similarly catastrophic mortality rates, and by 1349, the disease had genuinely spread as far north as Scandinavia. The genuine economic consequences of this massive population loss proved absolutely staggering. With so many agricultural workers dead, farmland genuinely went unworked, harvests failed, and the labor shortage that followed would eventually trigger significant, lasting changes to Europe's entire economic and social structure. Paradoxically, this genuine labor shortage eventually benefited many surviving peasants and workers, as the reduced workforce meant remaining laborers could genuinely demand higher wages and better working conditions, gradually beginning to erode the rigid feudal social structures that had dominated medieval Europe for centuries. This genuine shift in labor dynamics represented one of several significant, longer-term historical consequences of the Black Death, as the traditional feudal system, already showing signs of strain, began genuinely weakening throughout the following decades as a direct result of this demographic catastrophe. Beyond these genuine economic and social transformations, the Black Death also profoundly affected European religious and philosophical thinking, as the Catholic Church's genuine inability to explain or prevent such massive, indiscriminate suffering led some people to genuinely question established religious authority. This growing questioning of traditional authority, both religious and secular, historians argue, genuinely contributed to longer-term intellectual and cultural shifts throughout Europe. ultimately playing some role in the eventual emergence of Renaissance humanism in the following centuries. Art and literature from this period genuinely reflected society's profound preoccupation with death and mortality. With the emergence of the danse macabre, or dance of death, artistic tradition, depicting death as a genuine equalizer, visiting people of all social classes equally. By 1351, after roughly 4 devastating years of continuous spread throughout Europe, the initial wave of the Black Death genuinely began subsiding, though historians note the disease would continue returning in periodic, smaller outbreaks throughout the following centuries. By the time this initial catastrophic wave had finally passed, historians estimate Europe's total population had genuinely decreased by somewhere between 30 and 60%, representing millions upon millions of deaths across an incredibly short historical time frame. This genuinely catastrophic population loss would take Europe centuries to fully recover from, with some regions not returning to their pre-plague population levels until well into the 16th or even 17th centuries, according to demographic historians studying this remarkable recovery process. Modern scientific research, including genuine DNA analysis of remains found in medieval burial pits, has helped confirm that Yersinia pestis bacteria was genuinely responsible for this catastrophic pandemic, definitively resolving centuries of historical debate regarding the disease's actual biological cause. This genuine scientific confirmation has also helped historians better understand exactly how the disease spread, transmitted primarily through flea bites from infected rats, though the more deadly pneumonic form could genuinely spread directly between humans through respiratory transmission as well. Historians today genuinely recognize the Black Death as one of the most significant demographic and social catastrophes in all of recorded human history, an event that fundamentally reshaped European society, economics, religion, and culture for generations following this devastating pandemic. The genuine social and economic transformations triggered by this catastrophic population loss, including the gradual weakening of feudalism and shifting labor dynamics, historians argue, helped lay important groundwork for the significant historical transformations of the following centuries, including the eventual Renaissance period. Today, the Black Death remains a genuinely important historical case study, not just for understanding medieval history itself, but for what it teaches us about how societies respond to catastrophic, poorly understood crises, lessons that historians argue remain genuinely relevant even in our modern world. Thanks so much for watching. If this incredible and sobering story of catastrophe and resilience surprised you, please leave a comment below, follow our Facebook page, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more untold stories from history. Until next time, take care.